UFOs are real, burgeoning, and not going away. This is the coming great deception. For when we go up, they come down. We go up, they show up. I'm your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli, another UFO update. This is CBS News. Catherine Herridge. You'll see it in just a second. But first, a word from our trusted sponsor.
Have you ever wondered what happened to the legendary Chuck Norris? I recently saw a video he made and now he's shot. The man is in his 80s and still kicking butt and working out and staying active. What's even more shocking is he's stronger, can work out longer, and even has plenty of energy left over for his grandkids. He did this by just making one change. He says he still feels like he's in his 50s. His wife even started doing this one thing too, and she never felt better. She says she feels 10 years younger. Her body looks leaner, and she has energy all day. Chuck made a special video that explains everything. Make sure you watch it by going to chuckdefense.com/LA or by clicking on the link below this video. It will change the way you think about your health. Once again, that's chuckdefense.com/LA. Click on the link in the description below to watch the video now. You won't believe how simple it is. Just a reminder, the legendary Chuck Norris is a whopping 84 years old and yet has more energy than I do. He discovered he could create dramatic changes to his health simply by focusing on 3 things that sabotage our body as we age. Folks, check this out. Please go to the description box below, chuckdefense.com/LA, www.chuckdefense.com/LA.
I'm going to, we've got a 2-camera shoot going here. Here's the headline. Pentagon UFOs could pose risk to aircraft above the U.S. You know, the way the media always looks at this, the threat. So it's always about threat and risk. And, that is true on some level. If you've got UFO craft flying all around, they don't care about flight paths or anything else. They're just going to zip around. And we've seen photographs of this. We've seen video of this, where craft is appearing and buzzing planes, and we've had too many reports from pilots and other eyewitnesses where the craft is coming right at the plane at the last second, veers off. So we know it's a reality. In fact, in our very first film, Gil Zimmerman and I, right there, 10 films, folks. What are you waiting for? Streaming at LAMarzulli.net. But all 10 films, in the very first film, there's a airplane pilot, and his name is Dennis. And Dennis comes on the record talking about this huge UFO that just shoots right next to and paces their plane, and rays of light are coming out of this thing, and there's windows. Thanks to my business partner, Gil Zimmerman, we have 10 of these things. And you need to watch them. End of story. You need to do your homework. Rules of disclosure. And I'll get into that towards the end of the program. But let's roll this thing, and we'll see where it goes.
This week, the U.S. government releasing a new report on unidentified anomalous phenomena, what most people know as UFOs. The report found that between August of last year and April this year, the office tracking these sightings received nearly 300 reports. Some of these incidents are still under investigation because they could pose a security threat to U.S. military operations, especially aviation. Let's bring in Chris Impey, a professor of astronomy at the University of Arizona. Chris has more than 210 publications on space and has written about past sightings. So, Chris, the report says there's no evidence that any of these objects came from outer space. Is that the final word?
That's been the word for the last few years, from the NASA committee, from the congressional reports to U.S. Congress. It's been consistent. Nobody's seen little green men yet.
Okay, so have officials made the data available?
You'll notice the way he couches that. Nobody's seen little green men then. So now he's treating the whole subject very light, sort of tongue-in-cheek. Ha, 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 no one's seen any little green men yet. There's no evidence. Excuse me. We know that the thing crashed in Roswell in 1947. It's a matter of fact. In fact, in our 2 films, let me see if I can, in our films on Roswell, where's the other one? In our films on Roswell, I know, another shameless plug. But you guys, if you haven't watched these, you have no idea what you're missing. The bottom line is we showed that there's a preponderance of evidence that UFOs crashed in Roswell. And guess what? They had bodies that came out of the craft. Deathbed confessions from people. In the halls of Congress, we've had people talk about the crashed retrieval and the non-human biologics, but somehow he's spinning it around the other way. And he's right. There's no conclusive evidence that these craft come from outer space. They are interdimensional, in my opinion. And I stand on that. It's been decades and decades and decades of stating on the record that these are not extraterrestrial, they are interdimensional. Let's continue. Let's see what he has to say.
To outside experts for an independent review.
They will make all the unclassified data available, and the data that the NASA committee that is studying hundreds of reports is also going to be made available. The classified stuff has to go through a very torturous procedure, so I'm not sure others.
I'm going to walk through this. 270 reports of UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena. So we're not calling them UFOs anymore because that's too much of a tinfoil hat. Let me just bend down here. I want to thank Karen Wilkinson for getting me my tinfoil hat. I'm wearing mine proudly, as you can see here. And I did this because, this is what we were called. Anyone who reported about UFOs, you're a conspiracy theorist. You're wearing your tinfoil hat. I mean, seriously? Seriously. Why can't we just have a discussion about this? So now they changed it to unidentified anomalous phenomena. Okay. So now we can talk about it. No evidence UAPs from outer space. Well, that's a good statement, actually, because in my opinion, they are not from outer space. They are, in fact, interdimensional entities. Maybe foreign in origin. I'm not buying that for a stinking second. In my opinion, and this goes back to David Grush, which is the first rung of a ladder of disclosure. You see why you need to get this book? Do you see why you need to read it and reread it and go to the site, runthedisclosure.com, where we do updates, because this is the coming great deception. And I'll get into that at the end because this is ridiculous. We should have these things flying off the shelf. And there's such an ambivalence in the Christian community. Spend the $20 for crying out loud and get armed and understand what the heck is going on, because this is CBS News. It's not something that's like on George Dory Coast to Coast or some conspiracy theory website. It's not that at all. It's flipping CBS News. And yet the church dithers. LA, calm down. You're going to... Easy, LA, easy. Okay, I'll calm down. So we know that David Grush stated on the record with Tucker Carlson way back in 2017. He's on with Tucker, and Tucker's, back and forth. And he says, well, where do you think these things come? Is this the Chikoms or the Russians or any other the North Koreans? Grush says, no, absolutely not. Whatever this was not from this earth. These craft moved away. We're talking like a bullet out of a gun. 50 miles in 2 seconds. The G-forces alone would crush a human being. What are they doing? They're bending the space and time around the craft. I got that from Bob Lazar. They're bending the gravity wave that's in the craft, which Bob Lazar talks about. And, can I prove that? No, but I'm going by what Lazar said. Lazar was there at S4. He was there. That gravity wave bends space and time as we know it. And that's why they can make right-angle turns and do all this other stuff. Most reports from military restricted airspace. Okay. And you can see the lights on the right-hand side here. And this is close encounters of the first kind. Lights in the distance, not sure what they are, right-angle turns, anomalous objects. I get that. Close encounters of a second kind, they're up close, like really close, like a couple 100 yards away. Close encounters of a third kind, you see entities either in the craft or on the ground. Close encounters of the fourth kind, you're having face-to-face talking with these entities. Fifth kind, you're summoning them. Don't do that. Let's go down. Some reports from commercial pilots. Yeah, we know that. Notice that right now, the military is controlling all of this because most reports from military restricted airspace. But, Bob and Susie out there who's seeing stuff, that's somehow discounted. Someone like Karen Wilkinson, who was abducted. And by the way, our fourth film on abductions, Al Matthews, Karen Wilkinson, Angela Beckman, Emil Jorik, they're all abductees. They were all taken. We have 4 of them. We could get more, but I think the 4 people that come on the record are enough to tell you what's going on. That the UFO phenomenon is real, virtually not going away, and the abduction phenomena is physical. It goes back to Daniel 2:43, the mingling of the seed. That's what we're seeing now. So let's continue.
Things we'll get to see that.
Right. I know all about declassification. So what do we know about that data that is classified? Any hints?
Well, I think it's mostly classified because it occurs, near military bases or whatever. And I suspect the type of data we're looking at involves radars or particular imaging devices that the military just doesn't want to publicize. So it's not a question of what the data shows, it's a question of the detectors that they're using.
So this is really a question of sources and methods and revealing how good the U.S. military techniques are.
Exactly. It's a sort of intelligence issue. Same would be with the intelligence agencies.
Okay, so let's go a little deeper on the risk these objects could pose to U.S. military operations. What does that look like?
Well, the report says there were no indications of direct threat to the military pilots who saw them, or I think the commercial pilots. So it's very interesting because they're not, intervening. I mean, obviously, American military deal with incursions and proximity of Russian or Chinese pilots where there's real risk and danger. That doesn't seem to be happening here. So they're at a sufficient distance that they don't declare it a direct threat.
So just the bottom line, what explains all of this?
Well,
Let me stop right there. You'll notice the way she couched that question. And I believe these people, and I really respect Catherine Herridge. She's amazing. I mean, she's been around for a long time. She's in my opinion, the best of the best. I mean, she really is incredible. But, the way they treat it is sort of with a big smile on their face and let's just have a nice discussion, which is fine. I've talked about that before. But what we are looking at is the coming great deception. I mean, I'm going to stand on that. My feet are in intellectual concrete with that statement. And I'm not going to, get that sledgehammer and start busting off the concrete. I am in intellectual concrete after decades of research. This is the coming great deception. Because what's going to create a new world order, what's going to create a one world government is exactly this. And you remember when that's written 2,000 years ago in the book of Revelation, even 150 years ago, people go, well, that's impossible. That will never happen. And remember, 150 years ago, there's no electricity, there's no cars, there's no planes. The modern world as we know it does not exist just 150 years ago. It's the same as it always been. Yeah, we got the steam engine, we got the Industrial Revolution beginning to happen, but, go back 150 years, that's the tail end of the 19th century. You got telegraph, but no electricity as we know it today. Running water, hot water in people's houses, next. Running toilets, next. Airplanes, refrigeration, all of that. Automobiles, airplanes, rockets, none of that. None of that exists. None of that exists. So we have come into a place in history that now you can see that a one world government and a one world religious system is a possibility. And that begs the question, how is that implemented? Some guy's just not going to stand up and go, yep, we're going to have a one world government right now. That's not going to happen. But you have a nuclear event on this planet, and that's the game changer. Because we're all linked up with the satellites. I write about this in Relative Disclosure. Never shameless plug. That's why you need to get the book. But the bottom line is this. You have a nuclear event going off, and that creates the greatest climate of fear that mankind has ever experienced collectively. That's when they show up. That's what they're waiting for. That's conjecture, in my opinion. That's conjecture. But that's what I believe is about to happen. You get one nuclear event anywhere on this planet, that's a game changer. Creates the greatest climate of fear that mankind has ever experienced collectively. That's when they show up. That's when they show up. Let's continue. You'll notice that the byline down at the bottom, Pentagon UFO sightings could be linked to foreign adversary. Going back to Commander David Fravor, and I correct myself if I said David Grush. I meant Commander David Fravor in 2017 on Tucker Carlson's show. When Tucker Carlson asked Commander David Fravor, in your opinion, what was this? And he says, not from this earth. So here we got a F-18 pilot, the best of the best of the best, telling us that whatever this thing is, Chi-Coms don't have it, the Russians don't have it, North Koreans don't have it, nobody's got this, okay? So the Pentagon does a reversal, could be linked to foreign adversary. Well, who do you believe? Who are you going to believe? The Pentagon or a pilot who actually had a close encounter of the first and second kind with the tic-tac shaped objects? I'm going to believe Commander David Fravor. End of story.
Pretty slim, actually. Only 12
It does. That is slim for a government report. Let's be real. Okay? It's
not only 5 pages of text. So we talked about the shapes. The shapes are interesting because in more than half of the cases where our shape is reported, it's a sphere or a spherical object. That's kind of interesting because anyone who knows a bit of physics knows that spheres are not very aerodynamic. And so none of our high-speed conveyances are spheres. Weather balloons are spheres, so maybe some of these are weather balloons. So that's one thing that jumps out in the data. And the other is the geographical distribution, which wasn't called out much in the report, but there's a map. And the sightings are very interestingly equalized. So that's one thing that jumps out of the data. And the other is the geographical distribution, which
Repeat that. This is
more than half of the cases where our shape is reported, it's a sphere or a spherical object. That's kind of interesting because anyone who knows a bit of physics knows that spheres are not very aerodynamic. And so none of our high-speed conveyances are spheres. Weather balloons are spheres, so maybe conveyances are spheres. Weather balloons are spheres, so maybe some high-speed conveyances are spheres.
So I get it. So he's, covering all his bases. But to be using the weather balloon thing, this goes back to 1947. It's a weather balloon that crashed in Roswell. Nothing to see here. In fact, let me show it to you. It's just unbelievable, right? Here it is, right here. Ramey. General Ramey empties the saucer. And what does he say? Fort Worth, Texas, July 9th. An examination of the Army revealed last night that the mysterious objects found on a lonely New Mexico ranch was a harmless, high-altitude weather balloon, not a grounded flying disc. I mean, this is after all these years, they're running the same stinking story. It's a weather balloon. Now, I get it. Some of them, look, we're way past this. You got to start leveling with us because you've got a disparity between this gentleman who's talking to Catherine Herridge and Commander David Fravor or David Grush or Luis Elizondo. I mean, seriously, what are we looking at here? Let's continue.
Maybe some of these are weather balloons. So that's one thing that jumps out of the data. And the other is the geographical distribution, which wasn't called out much in the report, but there's a map. And the sightings are very interestingly clustered. They're mostly in the southern U.S. The big hotspot is the southern U.S. coast, East Coast, where there are a lot of military bases, some in California, and then a huge number in the Persian Gulf and over Iraq, and then another huge number over China, which is also interesting because most of these seem to be U.S. sightings. I'm not sure where the Chinese data came from.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. So just to take that a little bit further here, so there are 4 hotspots where you have these sightings, 2 in the U.S., the Gulf, and then China. What do you think explains that?
They're not uniformly distributed at all. And that's in the case of UFO sightings going back to Roswell, going back 80 years. If you plot them, hundreds of thousands of sightings on a map, U.S. gets a lot of sightings. They fall off at the Mexican and Canadian borders, which doesn't really make sense because if something's in the sky over the border, Mexicans should see it as well as Americans, and Canadians should see it too.
I'm going to stop him right there. There's a clip that we've shown. It's in our Watches series where there's this whole flotilla of UFOs going right over Mexico City, right over Mexico City. And there's like, 20 of them. And it's just like this as they move. It's unbelievable. It's filmed by multiple witnesses. Jaime must, this is what bothers me. He's saying Mexico doesn't have sightings. Are you kidding me? Go down and talk to Jaime Maussan for crying out loud. Seriously? Popocatépetl, the volcano, stuff's going in and out all the time. I've got in my hard drive tons and tons of UFO sightings from Jaime Maussan that he let Richard Shaw and I use. Some of that is actually in the films. So, to make a statement like that is like, I'm not buying that. And then you've got Al Matthews, who's up in Canada, who says exactly the opposite. They're all over the place. They're all over the place out in Vancouver Island. He sees them. I've seen the videos. So I'm not sure what he's talking about with that. It doesn't wash with the data that I have.
With the same population and size roughly as the U.S., hardly any sightings, very, very few. So it's not uniform. This seems to be an example of American exceptionalism. I'm not sure why.
Or curiosity, right? That's or looking for the unexplainable, kind of trying to look for an answer there. Chris Impey, thanks for your analysis.
Sure, happy to be with you.
Okay, this is in continuing that. Republican Representative Tim Burkett said in an interview Wednesday that an admiral, whom he did not identify, had told him of an unidentified craft moving at incredible speeds in the sea. They tell me something's moving at hundreds of miles an hour underwater, as large as a football field underwater, the Tennessee congressman told former Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz, who now hosts a show on right-wing news outlet One America News. This was a documented case, and I have an admiral telling me this stuff. Burkett, known for his claims that the U.S. government is hiding the existence of UFOs and other so-called alien activity, said anything is possible given the vastness of God's great universe. However, we told Americans not to worry about the suspected extraterrestrials' extraordinary advances. I'm not worried about them harming me, he said. I mean, with that capability, they would have barbecued us a long time ago. No evidence has been produced of intelligent life beyond Earth. However, Congressman has taken an increasingly serious look at reports of mysterious flying objects, treating the once widely mocked topics of UFOs, now often dubbed unidentified anomalous phenomena, into a serious issue. In March 24, the Pentagon released a report that it had no proof of UFOs, saying that many suspicious sightings turned out to be, here we go, merely weather balloons, spy planes, satellites. I mean, this is the double speak. Here we go again. And this is why it's so annoying when you get reports like this. So it's like this push and pull. The Pentagon releases something, but then you've got David Grush standing up in Congress saying, like, we've got crashed craft, we have the non-biologics, the bodies that were recovered. I mean, there's this. I mean, who do you want to believe? Seriously, I'm going with the whistleblowers. That's what I'm going with. So let's continue. The Pentagon rejected claims made at a congressional hearing in 2023 by a former Air Force intelligence officer that the U.S. government had recovered a series of crashed unidentified aircraft and even non-human biologics over the decades. You know, you can believe the Pentagon. I'm going with, that's not Commander David Fravor, but Fravor was the one that broke the story 2017. This is the 16th rung on the ladder of disclosure, where David Grush is in front of Congress and stating that, yes, we have bodies, non-human biologics. That's what I'm going with. In November, the Pentagon Office investigated reports of UAPs, received 21 reports last year that contain enough data for the intelligence community to continue actively investigating. That's Representative Tim Burkett. Behind him is Representative Anna Paulina Luna, and behind both of them is Matt Gaetz. UAPs encompass a broad range of strange objects or data points detected in the air, on land, or at sea. The most well-known UAPs have been reported by military pilots who typically describe round or cylindrical objects traveling at impossible high speeds with no apparent means of propulsion. Some of the objects have been caught on video. So it goes on there. Nothing really new, unfortunately, as we know it. But what's interesting is the phenomenon is real, burgeoning, not going away. It is something that people need to understand is the coming great deception, in my opinion. So I want to talk about something here. This is the book. This is the DVD set right here, okay? Runs of Disclosure. We've sold about 12,000 copies so far. That number should have a 0 behind it, at least a 0. This is the most important book I've ever read. Thousands of you come here every single day. And thank God you come here. I mean, it's great. And I do, 5, 6, 7 shows a week from our studio in an undisclosed location. But I would ask you, if you've not received the book, if you've not gotten the book yet, you need to order the book. You need to go to runsofdisclosure.com, order the book, because it's interactive. All the websites, all the material is right there. It's an interactive website, Rungs of Disclosure. All the footnotes are right there. You can click the link and go. The 18th and 19th rung, which are not in the book, because that came out, those rungs, 18 and 19, came after October when the book was released. You need to do your homework. You know, when you buy the book, it helps keep everything going here. You really need to do it, folks. What's $20 to most of you? It's nothing. Then we've got the $10 DVD set by my business partner and myself, Gil Zimmerman. I mean, we are the tip of the spear. There's no other Christian film company or anybody else who's done 10 films on UFOs. There's other films coming out. There's other people that have jumped on the bandwagon, which is fine because we need other voices. But there it is. I would ask that you go to marzulli.com and check it out, or go to runtodisclosure.com. What are you waiting for? The phenomenon is real, burgeoning, and not going away. This is the coming great deception. But when we go up, they come down. When we go up, they show up. Thanks for watching.